They thought I was just a foolish old woman who didn't understand modern family dynamics. My daughter-in-law Sarah smiled to my face while poisoning my son against me. My own son Michael, the boy I carried for 9 months, raised alone after his father died, chose his wife's lies over his mother's truth. They wanted me gone so badly they were willing to destroy everything I'd built. But what they didn't know was that this old woman had more fight left in her than they ever imagined. Takes a deep breath. It started with small things. Always does. Sarah would roll her eyes when I offered to help with the grandchildren. She'd make comments about outdated parenting methods when I suggested the kids spend time outdoors instead of glued to tablets. She'd whisper to Michael when she thought I couldn't hear. "Your mother is getting too involved. We need our space." I ignored it at first. New wives, new rules, I told myself. But then came the family dinners where I wasn't invited. The birthday parties I found out about through neighbors who saw the cars in the driveway. The Christmas morning when I sat alone in my house, waiting for a phone call that never came, while they celebrated 3 streets away. Michael used to call me every Sunday. For 35 years, that boy called his mother every single Sunday at 2 p.m. Until Sarah decided Sundays were for nuclear family time only. The calls became every other week, then once a month, then silence. Voice grows harder. But the real betrayal, the one that showed me exactly who I was dealing with, happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I'd fallen in my kitchen. Nothing serious. Just slipped on some water from a leaky faucet. Bruised my hip, scraped my arm. Mrs. Patterson next door heard me cry out and called 911. They took me to the hospital as a precaution. The ER doctor said I was fine, gave me some pain medication, told me to take it easy for a few days. But when they asked for my emergency contact, I gave them Michael's number. He was still my son after all. Still the person I trusted most in this world. He came. But he didn't come alone. Sarah walked into that hospital room like she owned it. Clipboard in hand, that fake sweet smile plastered across her face. "Oh, Elena," she said. "We've been so worried about you living alone in that big house." That's when I knew. This wasn't concern. This was opportunity. Voice becomes cold. They'd been planning this. Planning to use any excuse, any small accident or moment of vulnerability, to convince everyone that I was no longer capable of caring for myself. Sarah started talking to the social worker, before I even knew there was a social worker involved. "She's been having memory issues," she lied. "Leaving the stove on, forgetting appointments. We've been trying to help, but she's very stubborn." I watched my son, my own flesh and blood, nod along with every lie his wife told. "We think it might be time to consider assisted living," Michael said, not meeting my eyes. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere with people trained to help." The social worker looked at me with pity. "Mrs. Rodriguez, your family is just concerned about your well-being." "My family," I said slowly, "doesn't know the first thing about my well-being." But the damage was done. Sarah had planted the seeds. Now she just needed to watch them grow. Long pause. Over the next 2 weeks, they launched their campaign. Sarah called Adult Protective Services, claiming I'd been found confused and disoriented in my home. She told the neighbors I was declining rapidly, and that they were doing everything they could to help. She even got Michael's sister, my own daughter Carmen, to sign a letter stating that the family was concerned about Mom's mental state. Carmen, who lived in California and hadn't visited in 3 years, who knew nothing about my daily life except what Sarah chose to tell her over the phone. The worst part? They were all so convincing, so concerned, so loving in their betrayal. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't declining. And I damn sure wasn't going to let them write the ending to my story. I started documenting everything. Every lie they told, every appointment they made without my consent, every conversation where they discussed my needs like I wasn't in the room. I called my lawyer, James Morrison, who'd handled my husband's estate 20 years ago. Told him what was happening. Elena, he said, this sounds like guardianship abuse. They're trying to have you declared incompetent so they can control your assets. My assets? Of course. The house my husband and I had paid off over 30 years. The life insurance money I'd invested wisely. The small business I still owned, 3 rental properties that provided steady income. Sarah had always hated that I was financially independent. Hated that I didn't need them for anything. Hated that I could choose to help or not help based on how they treated me. So she decided to take away my choice. James helped me understand what they were really after. If they could get me declared mentally incompetent, Michael would become my guardian. And as my guardian, he would control everything. My money, my property, my medical decisions, even where I lived. They could put me in the cheapest facility they could find and use my money to upgrade their lifestyle. They could sell my house, the house where I'd raised my children, where my husband had built flower boxes for every window, and pocket the profit. They could erase me completely and call it love. But James had a plan. We're going to let them think they're winning, he said. Let them file their petition. Let them schedule their evaluations. And then we're going to show the court exactly what this is really about. The hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in May. Sarah had arranged for Dr. Patricia Wells, a geriatrician, who'd never met me, to testify about my probable cognitive decline. She'd found 2 neighbors willing to say they'd seen me acting confused in public. She'd even coached my granddaughter Ashley, Michael's 16-year-old daughter, to write a statement about how worried she was about Grandma's behavior. Ashley, the little girl I'd taught to bake cookies and braid hair, who'd spent every summer at my house until Sarah decided I was a bad influence. They thought they had everything covered. They didn't know about the private investigator James had hired. They didn't know about the bank records we'd pulled. And they sure didn't know about the recording device I'd been carrying in my purse for the past month. Voice growing stronger. The day before the hearing, I played James the recording I'd made at Michael's house the previous week. I'd gone over to drop off Ashley's birthday present. Something Sarah couldn't refuse without looking cruel. While they thought I was in the bathroom, I heard them in the kitchen. Sarah, once we get guardianship, the first thing we do is sell her house. The market's hot right now. We could easily get $400,000. Michael, I still feel bad about this. Sarah, she's going to need care eventually anyway. This way we control the money instead of some nursing home taking everything. We can put her somewhere decent but affordable, and use the rest to pay off our mortgage, maybe get a bigger place. Michael, what if she fights us? Sarah, she's 76 years old with no husband and no allies. Who's going to believe her over us? We're her loving family, remember? Voice ice cold. Who's going to believe her over us? Those words played in my head all night. And by morning, I knew exactly how I was going to answer that question. The courtroom was small. Just the judge, a court reporter, and the lawyers. Michael and Sarah sat on one side, looking appropriately concerned. I sat on the other side with James, looking like exactly what I was. Late payments. They weren't just greedy. They were desperate. And desperate people make stupid mistakes. I found out Michael had already forged my signature on a loan application, using my house as collateral. That's a felony. Federal mail fraud if they'd used the postal service. Sarah had been intercepting my mail, including insurance checks and social security statements. Also felonies. They'd opened a credit card in my name. Another felony. The house of cards they'd built was about to collapse, and they thought making me disappear would save them. Instead, it buried them. The criminal trial lasted 3 months. Every detail of their scheme came out in court. The forged documents. The intercepted mail. The lies they told to doctors, social workers, and family members. Ashley had to testify. She cried when she admitted that Sarah had told her what to write in her statement. had coached her on what to say if anyone asked questions. I didn't want to hurt Grandma, she sobbed on the witness stand. But Mom said if I didn't help, Grandma would end up on the street because she was too proud to ask for help. Even their lies had been lies. The jury took 2 hours to find them both guilty. Michael got 18 months in federal prison. Sarah got 2 years. But the real justice came after the trial. Ashley came to live with me. The court said she could choose, and she chose her grandmother over parents who taught her that love means lying to protect people from the truth. We baked cookies that first weekend. Real cookies from scratch, not the kind that come from a tube. And while we rolled out the dough, she told me how scared she'd been that I really was sick, how worried she'd been that no one would take care of me. Grandma, she said, I never wanted them to send you away. I just wanted someone to make sure you were okay. Baby, I told her. The people who really love you don't send you away. They show up. They ask questions. They listen to your answers. And they trust you to know what you need until you tell them different. She nodded, understanding more than any 16-year-old should have to. It's been 2 years now. Ashley graduated high school early. Turns out she's brilliant when she's not being used as a weapon against her own family. She's starting college in the fall, pre-law. Says she wants to help people like her grandmother who get betrayed by the people they trust most. Michael got out of prison 6 months ago. He lives in a studio apartment across town, works at a warehouse, and calls me every few weeks. Not to ask for money or forgiveness, just to see how Ashley is doing. Mom, he said the last time he called. I know I don't deserve it, but could you tell me how she's doing in school? I tell him, because Ashley is his daughter, and some connections can't be completely severed, no matter how badly they're damaged. But I don't tell him anything else. I don't tell him that I sleep better now than I have in years. I don't tell him that Ashley and I take cooking classes together, or that we're planning a trip to Italy next summer. I don't tell him that I'm happy. Sarah remarried 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Some man she met online who doesn't know about her criminal record. They moved to Arizona. I don't know if she ever thinks about what she tried to do to me, but I hope she does. I hope it sits with her like a stone in her stomach every time she looks in the mirror. Because here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't just hurt the person being betrayed. It changes the person doing the betraying. It turns them into someone they never thought they could be. Sarah turned herself into a woman who could look an elderly widow in the eye and lie about loving her while stealing everything she'd worked for. Michael turned himself into a son who could choose money over his own mother. They thought they were solving their problems. Instead, they became people their former selves would have been ashamed to know. But that's the thing about betrayal. It always costs the betrayer more than the betrayed. Because the betrayed still knows who they are. They still know what they believe in, what they stand for, what they won't compromise. The betrayer? They have to live with the knowledge of what they were willing to sacrifice for money, for comfort, for an easier life. They have to live with the fact that when it mattered most, they chose selfishness over love. People ask me if I miss my son. If I wish things could go back to the way they were. The truth is I miss the son I thought I had. The one I raised to be honest and loyal and protective of the people he loves. But that son never existed, or if he did, he disappeared somewhere along the way. The man who tried to have me declared incompetent so he could steal my life's work. I don't miss him at all. What I have now is better than what I lost. I have a granddaughter who knows the difference between love and control. I have a home that no one can take away from me. I have peace of mind that comes from knowing exactly where I stand with everyone in my life. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when my family tried to bury me, they forgot the most important thing. I'm not just any old woman. I'm their mother. I'm the woman who taught them everything they know about fighting. They should have remembered that before they picked a fight with me. Some people think revenge is about getting even. But real revenge is about getting free. It's about making sure that the people who tried to diminish you understand exactly who they were dealing with. My son and daughter-in-law thought they were dealing with a confused old woman who would go quietly into whatever corner they chose for her. Instead, they found out they were dealing. Woman who built a life from nothing after her husband died. A woman who raised 2 children alone while running a business. A woman who survived cancer, bankruptcy, and loss, and came out stronger every time. A woman who doesn't disappear just because someone finds her inconvenient. And now they know. Now they all know. The old woman they tried to erase is still here. Still standing. Still fighting. And she's not going anywhere until she's good and ready.